Dr. Jazz.
I'm a guitar player, so the first time, of course, I've heard you was through Alan Holdsworth, obviously. So, and then I checked out your other stuff, and I'm also the latest stuff you did, and really amazing. It's just like
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
what you do, and your compositions and your style of playing, and I want to talk about some of these things. So,
Okay, yeah, whatever you want to talk about, we can.
yeah,
We can do all that.
I wrote in the email that I would like to discuss the excursions and images, the last one, and I don't know, listen to it, and it's kind of like went through Köln concert modern experience meets free impro. I don't know, something like that. And
Yeah.
how did you approach this project? And how do you also jump into a 27-minute improvisation and know where to lead?
Yeah, those were well. I was telling somebody that so these particular improvisations I recorded a few years back, right after I got my Steinway 9-foot D that I have in my studio, which is a beautiful piano.
Oh yeah.
But I saw Keith Jarrett play in 1979 at a solo concert here in Boston.
Oh.
It was just amazing, and to watch somebody sit on stage in front of 3,000 people and just start playing off the top of their head and just improvise. It was quite. I was like 19 or 20. I was a student at Berklee College of Music, and it was just fantastic to see somebody do that. And but I'd experimented with that a lot on my own back then. I would just sit at the piano and just start playing whatever sounds I wanted. When I was in high school, I'd just sit. I'd come home from my girlfriend's house, who's my wife now, and I would just come home late at night, and I would just sit in the dark, and I would just play whatever came to my fingertips, because it doesn't matter at that point, So I did a little bit of that, and then over the years, I've done a lot of that just on my own. I'll sit at the piano and just kind of play stuff, and I also play classical music, and I practice. I'm not a professional classical player, but I do play a lot of classical, and I study classical. Yeah. I have a teacher now. So you can hear in that particular recording that a lot of my classical influences in there: Chopin, Debussy, Prokofiev. There's some Stravinsky in there, as well as some jazz stuff, and just kind of free thing. I was really into like just kind of free playing. I did a lot of that in groups where you just start playing. So I had it wasn't something I just did at that moment. Okay, I'm going to play this kind of free improvisation. So I've been doing it a while, but at that point in my life, it's about maybe 10 years ago when I did this, and I just had this urge to do a solo piano thing of some sorts, and so one night I just set up my mics on my piano and dimmed the lights, and I played what you hear on the record is what I played. There's no edits or anything. The second track, the long one you're talking about, the very long one, that was the first thing I played. That, and then the third track and the fifth track, that was all one performance. That was, I just sat and played three things. Yeah. Just like a set. And I don't know what I did at the time. I didn't know what I did or how it was or anything. I just did it. And then I took a little break, and then I came back and I played what you hear on the first track and the fourth track, those two things. And I played it, and that was it. And then I listened to it a few times. And then it just set for years and years. And every once in a while I'd listen to it. I'm like, there's some interesting things in there. And then just this last couple of years, I pulled it out, and I'm like, I think this could make like a work here. So I put it together. I put it in that order. It's on the record now. Yeah. And I did some some nice mastering with some reverb and sounds. And but basically I just left it as is, and it's what I played. So and then as I was working and listened to some things reminded me of the Samuel Barber Excursions, if you ever heard those works he did,
sure.
Which are sort of like improvisations, right?
Yeah.
And then that was sort of the idea for the title. And also Debussy's Images. He has that whole thing, which is very ethereal. And of course, Debussy's thing was like in music, there is no theory. The pleasure of the ear is the law. That's what he says. Of course, he knew his theory inside and out. Sure. But if the ear took you somewhere and you go, that's what's key. And so that's sort of the way I approached the whole thing. Anyway, so it finally came out after a lot of years, and I thought, oh, it's some nice stuff. I like for people to hear this other side of me. That you hear me in more of the electronic version with Alan or with Stanley or my own thing. And this is something that's different, and I thought, okay, I'll put it out.
No, it's beautiful.
That's what it is. Thanks. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, I didn't expect it, in a way. I mean, you can hear, of course, when your compositions and when you solo, even or on keyboards, of course, the influences. Yeah. But on piano, it's kind of more naked. It's more like
it's sort of everything comes together, right? The classical stuff, Keith Jarrett, of course, a lot of Chick Corea. I mean, all the guys that I grew up listening to as a kid, it's all in there a little bit, So I would say that one release, the Excursions, sort of shows all of my experiences and all of my influences, and maybe a little bit of myself, which is really, yourself is really just your experience, and
definitely,
nothing gets pulled out of a hat like new, right? It's just, it's just how you grow up, what you listen to, what you like, what you don't like, and you form yourself from that, That's my thought anyway. So
no, definitely. But did you do some solo piano gigs also after or in between those 10 years and now, or are you planning to a solo piano concert or?
A couple local things. I would dabble into, maybe with a group, one of my own groups. I would do something on my own for a portion of the set or something. I did a concert with my classical teacher once, which was we played here in Massachusetts and then once in Texas, and the pieces he played were the fantasies that composers wrote back then, which is another term for improvisation. There was in a fantasy back then, there was no form. The composer would just write. And also the variations, like the Beethoven variations, is the same. They have a head and then they blow over the head kind of thing, And so we did a sort of a concert together like that, where he played the Beethoven C minor in variations, and then I played a version of that on my own. I played the theme, and then I just did my own
that's beautiful.
Variations to that in a way, and that progression, I heard it is a very it's got sort of almost a Spanish kind of and it reminded me of a Chick Corea progression with this minor, and it goes. And so at one point I got into some Montuno, the best I can do. A white guy from Texas playing Montuno, but and I played my little Chick stuff, and then it went to. I just did sort of the same way that Beethoven approached it, but I just did my own version of it. And then we did some other stuff. I played blues, and he would play a Schumann fantasy. But it was a nice concert. So I've done a few solo things, but not a lot. The thing I did on Excursions, I haven't really done that as a live thing. I'm thinking about it. There's a couple of venues around here that I'm thinking about doing that. It's a very scary proposition. I don't know how Keith Jarrett did it. You just sit there. You have to have a lot of cojones to sit there in front of a bunch of people and not have anything prepared and just start playing. And most of us, like musicians, we have too many things going on in our head. Like, I wonder if the audience likes this, or I wonder if they thought that was stupid, or I think that was just stupid what I did, And in order to do that was a genius of Keith Jarrett. You have your head has to be completely clear, and you just play. And when I did record that night, I think I got in that kind of mood. I knew I was going to do that, so I kind of was getting my mindset to be in that situation where whatever I played was the right thing, and you have to go from that into another thing, and then at some point it finishes, you know. And so to do that live, though, you have to be a special genius like Keith Jarrett. There's not too many people who can do that. I don't know if I could do it, but
it would be fun to hear you actually do that.
It would be something, and the scary. You don't know what it's going to be when you start or when you finish, and it could be something good, it could be terrible. Who knows, you know? But I think that's the beauty of jazz and improvisation and music in general, is the idea of you just start, you know, and you have to finish, and then it is what it is, you know. So anyway, so that's I'm glad you listened to that. It's a long listen, I know.
No, I love solo piano. You know, it has such a strong heritage. You know, going way back to, you know, Fats Waller, or, you know, the early stuff, Art Tatum, amazing stuff, and, you know, all the people you've mentioned. And
a list. He was like the first solo pianist. Really, you know?
For instance, it's just like, man, you know, it's a scary. It's for me like also solo guitar. I feel, you know, it's like, man. You know, there's
you're kind of just out there, you know, and if I do, I'm like I said, I play classical music. I study it. I'm learning a Beethoven sonata now, but just to play that in front of people, I don't do it because I get too nervous, and because I have to play other people's notes, you know. If I play my own, I could do my concert like that, but it's my notes, and if I want to change it at the moment, I change it, you know. Exactly. I have a feeling that Chopin and Beethoven even and Schumann, they were all improvisers, as Bach was. Bach and Liszt, they could all just sit down and play. I have a feeling even when they played their own music that they changed a few things here and there, you know, as they played it. So, but nowadays in classical, you have to play the score, and it's very scary for a jazz musician to play exactly the score. So I don't do classical music professionally live or anything like that.
But it's amazing that you're learning it now, you know, at this stage, after all you've done, and you have, you know, an amazing technique and everything, that you're still like, okay, I want to learn this. I think that's
just keep learning.
That's
why stop learning? I don't know the concept of stop learning, especially in music and art. It never ends, you know. So do you play classical guitar?
Oh, I studied classical guitar, but, you know, I always return to it also, like
with a technique and
you know, finger style, or like during COVID, I was just like, you know, reminding myself of the beauty of like a G major chord and what to do, like, you know, just have some basics, and like not just like shedding technique. It's amazing. It's never stops.
This is why I go back to and it's really hard for me, like the Chopin, this Beethoven piece it's all mostly triads, and it's dominant tonic, for Christ's sake, but man, for me, it's so hard. I can play through Allen changes. I'm like, oh yeah. And then I get to Beethoven. I'm like, I have a tough time just playing a triad. And so it's really good for me to go back to the basics. And then also, like in classical guitar, it's really about the sound as well, you know, making a good sound. And I think on that Excursions, I did a pretty good job most of the time of really creating a good sound on the piano. And that's one thing I've been working on a lot the last few decades, is really making a good sound on the piano. It's, you know, and keyboards, the 10, 15 years before that, I played mostly keyboards, you know, and they have their own idea of sounds. You have to program, or I have to like put things together for patches. And of course I learned a lot from Alan doing that stuff. We played sort of the same kind of with his syntax thing. We played sort of the same kind of synth setup. He loved the DX Yamaha sounds and the Oberheim. And I had the same kind of setup. So I think that's what he liked about me, is we kind of enjoyed the same kind of organic synth sounds together. But I learned a lot from him as well. So
I want to ask you about that, Alan, later. You know, it's just like, of course, he's one of my heroes. And I mean, every guitarist is just, and what you play on his tunes, it's just like, that's incredible, just how you navigate through the changes, and especially your comping also, you know, because the stuff he played, the lines, it's just like I transcribed like a bunch of solos of his, like 20 solos.
Of Alan?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
have it on notes, and then I analyze this
Yeah.
stuff, and I'm like, man, what is this? I mean, I don't have the exact chord changes, so I kind of probably my own, but like just the lines, man, and it's
to tell you the truth, I didn't have the exact chord changes either, because you may have heard me say this before. He didn't have any charts. There was nothing written out, so the only thing he could do is, the only thing, not the only thing he could do, but what he did was he came up to me and he would just play voicings.
Really? I didn't know that. Oh, shit.
Yeah, so he would just play a voicing, and then I would figure out what the notes are, and then I would write it on a piece of paper, like whatever letters, and I would look at it and I would go, oh, that looks to me like an A flat Lydian type thing. And sometimes I would ask him what scale he was thinking of over that, and he's like, "Oh, let's see." And then I would gather maybe the harmony from that, and then of course I would find out what the bass note is from Jimmy or Schooley, and then I would put together. Then I'd name that chord. Would I name it? So that's kind of way that. But there was no chart saying this chord, that chord. It was based around his voicings, and then what scale he thought of, and then what bass note the bass player was thinking of or playing at the time.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
that. But to tell you the truth, we didn't have a lot of discussion about any of that. It was, nobody talked about chords, or he had the tunes. And of course, a lot of them were recorded when I joined the band in 1987 when I joined. So a lot of tunes were already recorded, so I could go back to the record.
Yeah.
But I had to do the same. I'd listen to it and kind of go, oh, that sounds like a B minor chord. Okay. But then I'd have to figure out, like, okay, is it B minor or the natural six or the flat six, or what kind of B minor is it? Like on funnels, there's this whole section with minor chords. It's like, if you look at the chart, it says D minor, C minor, D minor, E flat minor, D minor, G minor. But the scales that go to those minors are a little precarious. They're like, sometimes I don't know exactly the type of minor scale to play. In fact, me and Alan had a discussion about that once, and Alan was asking me about scales. I was going like, what the heck is this guy asking me about scales? He goes, oh, that section on funnels, do you play the E flat scale or the A flat scale? I'm like, and I was just going like, I can't, what is he doing asking me about scales, But I said, well, I don't know, so we that was one of the few times we actually talked about scales together, and I was just too like dumbfounded that he was asking me at the point, but it was a lot like a lot of the changes you had to kind of figure out the exact scale that you have to play over.
Yeah, sure. So that you
and it's important. Is it the flat six or the natural six on a minor? Is it these little things, because the way Alan's chord progression, you transcribe a lot of his stuff. I never transcribed any of his solos, so I'm not. I listened a lot, but I never transcribed, so I'm not exactly sure how he thought over solos. I learned more from you guys on blogs and talking.
I mean, you played
with
him. I think that's how you learn the best. That's
just like listen. I'm like, oh, I think it sounds. He's kind of doing this, okay, and then kind of create my own. Mostly, I don't transcribe this because I'm lazy. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to transcribe. It's just I tried it once when I was at Berkeley because everybody was transcribing. So I tried it once. I like, oh, okay, I'm going to transcribe. And I got through 3 bars. I'm like, oh my God, this is too hard. And then I gave up, and then I would just play Herbie's or Chick stuff and then stop it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I think he's doing that or whatever. So it was mostly out of laziness. But with Alan and his chords, there's no real key center. If you know,
exactly. Yeah.
So you can never, most of the time you can never say, oh, I'm in the key of, like a standard, I'm in the key of B flat, and the bridge goes to E flat, and then it goes to G, and then it's back. There's nothing like that. So it's like I realized from the very beginning, it's super, super important to know the exact scale that you're playing for each harmony. And then once I figured that out, then I could, because we played so many nights in a row, and you could hear, like, if you missed a scale as you're playing through his changes, it sticks out like really, it's just like just something as simple as the flat six or a natural six on a minor, it just sticks out really bad, you know. So it's not that you can't play outside stuff. Of course, Alan does, you know.
Sure.
But you have to really know that scale. Like on White Line. I don't know do you know the changes on that?
No. But I know the tune. Yeah.
Actually, that's one of my most favorite chord sequences he wrote. The way it's a group of let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, either 7 or 8 chords. It's a 7 or 8 chord sequence that happens starting on E flat, and then the whole thing happens again down a half step starting on D. It's the exact same progression, and then the release is just A flat, but not A flat Lydian. It's A flat Ionian.
Yeah.
So it's got that whole Ionian as a mode and thing, and then it goes through that. And it has a release of G minor, C sharp minor. And then it goes through that progression again. It's a really beautiful progression. And I found that some reason, it's not that Alan's music is easy, but I found it easy to solo over his changes. Because somehow they made like harmonic sense. Yeah. So as my fingers were going through one harmony and another harmony came, no matter where I was on the keyboard, it was easy to get to the next harmony, and then easy to get to the next one. Easy as it can be for Alan's tunes, but easy. And I've played some tracks for other people sometimes that he send me these changes, and I'm telling you, I have the worst time trying to play. I can't get from one harmony to another, you know. And it's mostly me, probably, you know, but. But with Alan, I never had that problem. Like the way he just hears the harmony going, even though it's not in a key center and it seems random, it just had this natural ability to flow from a harmony to the next. And as I would run a scale, the next harmony, it would be easy to get to the next scale. And so anyway, so that's his genius is, I think, in harmony more.
Oh yeah, it's
than anything else.
As a composer, he's so underrated as a composer. I mean, like, you know, also, I mean,
I truly believe that was his main, his main obsession was composing. I mean, of course, his soloing is just
that's out of this
nobody
world.
can even touch it, you know. And his technical ability, but his ideas and the way he constructed solos, live or in the studio, either way, it was just genius. But I think his obsession and his drive in music and what he did was more based around harmony and composition. That's what he focused on all the time, is harmony and composition and of course scales. But like,
sure.
He told me once on so you know the tune Tullio? I don't know if that's on the hard hat area. Tullio.
I know the record. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's on the hard hat area.
Yeah,
I think it's on that record.
Yeah.
I played the solo on that tune. I did it here in my studio, but there was one point I was so frustrated. I was this close to calling him up and saying like, you're gonna have to get Alan Pasqua to play the solo because I've been working on it for 3-4 days and I can't get a solo. You know, I was that close. You know, and then I kept working on it, and finally I got something that I could live, and then I sent it to him, and it wound up on the record. I guess he liked it, but. Yeah, that tune. It's if you see my cheat sheet on it, it's like a whole page of harmony, and it goes, and then it's got this. It has a first ending. It goes, and then when it comes back, there's different kind of chords in there through the repeat, and then it goes to the second ending thing. But then it's got like I don't know, like some kind of coda thing that goes back, and then it goes to this third ending. But then when it returns to another, it goes to a different. It's a huge form for solos.
Oh yeah.
And then after the solos, that melody comes in. Do do dee do, and it's just on F major. Do do dee do do. I think D, and then it goes to D minor or A minor. So it's really diatonic. Do do dee do 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 do. And then his solo comes in. And so I was in passing. I was just talking to him later about this, and he's like, oh, you know what's funny about that? He goes, I was trying to write a tune like Protocosmos.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Where it has a little simple melody and then like, I don't know, 5 or 6 chords. Right? I'm like, well, you kind of failed at that, didn't you? like, because it's just a huge. And he goes, yeah, I was trying to write a tune like that. And he goes, but this is the key to it. He told me, he goes, but it just kept going and going. That's all he said to me. And I was like, oh, I laughed, Later, I thought about that. I'm like, well, what kept going and going? And then I realized that's the way he writes. It's like the harmonies and the composition is not haphazard. It's not like, oh, I'm going to put a few chords and I think the movement or harmony is, to somebody of that level of genius, is more. It's more personal. It's more, I don't know, universal. I don't know the word. It's like it couldn't, in his world, in his mind, like he couldn't just go like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
Because it was driven to go to this, and then it was driven. I'm not that deep with my writing. I'm like, oh, that's a cool chord. Okay, I'll go here. That sounds good. Okay, that's enough. And then
it's like normal people, right?
Yeah, normal. Yeah, but it's normal folk. We're like, that's a good chord, And then, but I think with him, it's like it wasn't like that. So that was actually a really, later I thought about it, and then I thought, that's the genius in it. Actually, when I was, did you ever hear the piano solo version I did of Sphere? Right? Well, no. Well, that one too, but a Sphere of Innocence.
No.
If you go to my YouTube channel, everybody. Subscribe. Yeah. But if you go to my YouTube, I did a piano version, a solo piano version of Sphere of Innocence.
Oh wow, amazing. Okay.
And I played that. We did it on a few gigs, I think, and I think I'm on the record. I played a solo on the record version. And beautiful tune, and it's just amazing. But I did a whole solo piano version of it, the whole thing. And but I had to really study it in order to do it that way. I couldn't just so I had to study the head and harmony. And if you know that tune, it starts off so simple, like a pop song. It's very diatonic. It's like, boo-dee-dum.
You had those moments sometimes, I forget, on some tunes.
Yeah, it's just like it's really diatonic, and then he starts the song. But I'm telling you, it's one of the most complex harmonic resolutions and movements that I've come across. It's really complex and sneaky too. Like you'll hear that same theme again, and unless you have perfect pitch, which I don't. You'll think, oh, there's that theme again. But it's sometimes it's a half step away. Sometimes it's a fourth away. So things are always moving slightly on those harmonies, and you don't you can sense it, but you don't really know that it's that different. It's like kind of so that's a good example of like the way he thinks about harmony moving. It's just it's an incredible song. So I gain another new respect of the way he writes harmony from having to study that really detailed in order to get around it. So because it turned out to be super complex, and it took me a while. And I finally did a version of it. So, but anyway, so yeah, it's like I did learn a lot from him just from. Well, I was a huge fan before I even met him. So I was already listening.
You guys, by the way, how did you enter his group? How did that happen?
Just luck. Like I haven't auditioned for anything in my life. I had to audition once for a GB band, and which I was like, do I really need to audition to play Brick House? I mean, I didn't say that. So okay, because I was out of work. I needed some work, and I'm like, oh, I'm available. I can join your band. They're like, well, you'll have to audition. I'm like, oh, okay. and then I got the gig, and then before the first gig came up, the girl, she fired me. So, but it wasn't because of my playing. She realized that at some point I was going to go back on the road and do stuff, and then I wasn't going to be around. So she said, I think we're going to find somebody else. So the one gig I did audition for, I actually got fired from. So, but No, it was just all pure luck. All the things I did was just lucky. I happened to be in a place, and like with Stanley Clarke,
Yeah.
I was the musical director for this big operation called the Jazz Explosion. It was in the 80s, and I was like in my early 20s, and I was the musical director for these guys. And the people who were on the show were like Freddie Hubbard, Stanley Turrentine, Phyllis Hyman, Ramsey Lewis, Noel Pointer. There was like all these people, and every little tour we did would be 4 artists, and each artist would do 30 minutes each, and me and my trio would back them up.
Oh, amazing!
And it was a really great experience. I was a kid, pretty young, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. But Stanley Clarke was on one of those, but he didn't have a band at the time, so his segment, he just came and played solo bass for 30 minutes. So we would leave the stage, and he would play and do his thing. Great stuff. I was a huge fan because I was a huge RTF fan. So just to be around him. But one of the concerts, he called us up, said, hey, come on up here, we're going to jam. So we came up on stage, and we just played like a jam or something, And then of course he kind of went into School Days, so we played School Days. But then he didn't have a band, so he took me and the bass player who was in the Jazz Explosion, which is Jimmy Earl.
Oh, okay.
He was me and Jimmy were good friends here in Boston way back in the 80s. We played in bands here in Boston together. And then he left and played with the Crusaders and a bunch of other people. He went to New York and then LA. But I got him on this Jazz Explosion tour with me. Oh. And so then Stanley liked me and him. So he took me and Jimmy Earl, and they got his old drummer Jerry Brown, and he kind of put a band back together. The band's back together, And then I did a lot of tours with him, and we did a recording or two.
Yeah, I love it.
And it was great. It was mostly we never rehearsed either. It was mostly a jam band. We just like got together and played some stuff, and then of course we played School Days. We had to do that, and then we jammed on other stuff. He had some kind of blues that wound up being on one of his records. He called it Working Man.
Yeah.
And then one time I picked up his bass, and I started playing Lopsy Lou. You know that one? And he's like, oh, you know that tune? I said, yeah, let's do it. So we started doing that on the show, and we had fun on that and everything. So, but the way I met Alan was through that, because he called me up once in the 80s, and he said it was in the winter time, and he goes, hey, listen, I have this huge tour going to Europe. This is 1987, and he goes, I got this big tour going through Europe. He goes, but it's 2.5 months long, 10 weeks long.
Jesus, that's long.
And which was exciting and stuff, and all through Europe and all that. But I was just married for 7 years, and I had 3 kids. One was only a year old at that time. Man. And then I told Stanley, I'm like, man, it sounds great. I'd love to do this. It's exciting, but I need to talk to my wife, because we had to make some kind of plans for the kids, and I'm going to be gone. And back then there was no FaceTime, and you couldn't even call from hotels in Europe because it was expensive, and you couldn't get a good connection. So 2.5 months away from the family was a lot. But I said, let me talk to my wife, and we'll see how I can figure. He goes, okay, that's cool. See what you can do and everything. And oh, by the way, Alan Holdsworth is opening up for us on the whole tour. And I said, wait a minute, what would you say? He goes, oh, so Alan's going to be our opening act for the whole 2.5 months. And I'm a huge Holdsworth fan, and never talked to him or anything, but I was a giant fan. And then so I just said, oh, is that the case? Hey, I can do the tour, man. I can do the tour. I'll do it. I'll definitely. And he goes, do you need to talk to your wife? I'm like, she's going to be cool. It's going to be all right. Because I'm like, I'm not going to pass this up, just to be hanging with Alan for 2.5 months and whatever. I had no dream that he would ask me to play, but it's just like, I get this. So we started this tour, and they played first. All my stuff would be set up for Stanley's gig, but they would play, and then after about a week, I would show up at every one of his shows just before we played and listen. And Chad Wackerman was playing. Chad's brother was playing bass. It was just a trio.
Oh, okay.
And so it was. I guess Jimmy Johnson couldn't do it, so Chad's brother, who plays really great, played bass, and Alan. And Alan had just had the syntax, and I think he had just done Sand. He finished Sand, I think. Okay. And Avatron. So the syntax was new, so he had it out with him. But if you're doing a trio with guitar, I mean, if you're playing and you get to the solo section and you play a solo, you can stop and play a chord or play a couple of notes. But he had a problem with the syntax because it was just single notes playing. And then all of a sudden, like on Looking Glass and Pudwood and all these tunes, there was no chords because it was just a trio. So they played with a cassette.
Seriously. So
what Chad did is they made a cassette with a click track. It was just a tambourine on the left channel of a cassette. And then they mapped it out so that when the solos started, Alan had recorded the chords to the solo. So when they played Looking Glass, for instance, he would play the song, but Chad had to listen to this click track. Wow. And when they got to the solo, Alan's chords would come in on the cassette and it would feed back into his amps. And then he would change to a solo sound. He would solo on the syntax. And then, but they had to do it exactly the same way every night. And if for whatever reason they got off by a beat or a measure, which it would be completely off, you know. So and Chad hated it because he had this tambourine banging him in the head. Alan hated it because if he wanted to do another chorus, he couldn't. And so we were on the bus. This is about after a week. He goes, "Hey, do you want to sit in with us and so we can get rid of this effing cassette, man? We hate this effing cassette, man." And so I said, yeah, I'm here. I can play chords, you know. So he wrote out a few little things. I figured out. He showed me some stuff on, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 songs, like Looking Glass, Pudwood, a few others, and I forget the tunes I played, but it was a good chunk of the set, and so I just started playing with him, you know, and that's how it happened.
Wow! So it was really natural, basically.
So my luck was I got to replace a cassette. That was, you know, I'm slightly better than a cassette, so I got the gig, you know, and so and the other thing I had Oberheim, I had Oberheims and DX7s, and I used big because I was really into Joe Zawinul, so I had all of these kind of Zawinul sounds and patches and stuff, amazing. and he loved that kind of stuff too, Alan. Very orchestral, organic kind of sounds. But anyway, so he so then towards the end of the tour, he goes, "Hey, listen, I have a tour with my band coming up in September. Would you care to join us? You know, if you would like." And he was very humble.
Please, I love this.
So anyway, that's how I joined the band. And then he said, you know, he's very humble. And he's like, "Hey, I don't know if you want to do this or not, you know, but you can let me know. And I have this tour coming up, and you probably don't want to do it, but you know, would you care to join us on the tour?" And I was like, oh my God, you know, I was trying to keep my composure. I'm like, "Oh, I think I can do it. Yeah, I'd love to." And I had to learn all the other tunes. And then I have a good friend here in Boston, guitar player Bruce Bartlett, that we used to get together and learn Alan's tunes together, and we had a band together. And in fact, my band opened up for Alan years before.
Oh, really? Oh, well.
And here, a friend of mine produced the Alan concert here in Salem, Massachusetts, and and so my friend said, "Hey, do you want to open up for Alan?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be great." So this guitar player Bruce Bartlett, and Jimmy Earle was in the band, and then we had a local drummer, Ed Uribe, and then we opened up for Alan. But Alan didn't get to hear us play because they were driving from New Jersey. And there was a big storm, and they were really late. So his roadie, Gordy, who I know now, he came up. He goes, "You guys have to play more tunes because they're stuck coming up from New York." I'm like, "All right." So we played extra tunes, and we were like nervous opening up for Alan. We were like kids, you know. And and then so I got to see his show. I was like so happy. And then, but I was too nervous I saw after the show, he was talking to a bunch of people, very nice, but I was too nervous to actually go speak to him. So I never introduced myself or talked to him. I was like, wow. Oh my God, there's God. I mean, God. It's like, so I never met him then. So he was very humble. He's like, oh, he goes, so after he asked me to do a tour, I got a postcard. I think we were in, I don't know, Germany or something. I got a postcard and I wrote it to my friend, Bruce Bartlett. And the only thing I put on the thing, I just put, I got the gig. And I sent it to Bruce, and he knew exactly what I was talking about. And I think he still has it up on his wall somewhere in his teaching room. But yeah, it was just luck. It was just like they hated a cassette, and I happened to be there with some cheese boards, and I could play a couple of chords, So that's exactly how it started. It was like everything was just pure luck, So. But and he was super nice, and I think right after that we recorded Secrets,
like 89.
Yeah, and my tune Joshua and Maid Marian are both on there.
Yeah,
with Vinny Caluta. It was amazing.
Joshua, man, I love that one. That's a nice one.
Yeah, he heard me playing that tune Joshua on that tour with Stanley. I used to play it for sound check.
Oh, okay.
Just like like and so he walked up one time and he goes, hey, what's that tune you keep playing for sound check? He goes, man, I like that tune, man. I go, oh, thanks, man. I was like, and then he said this to me, this is before I joined him. He goes, hey, could we record that on my next record? I'm like, can you imagine that? Like,
yeah, you're like 29 or something. And like,
I'm like, oh my God, he wants to record my tune, and we did, we did. He put it on there, and Vinny played on it, and Jimmy plays amazing, and Alan plays. When he sent me this, when I got to hear his guitar part on it, it was just, it was just the highlight of my life. I couldn't believe, here's my tune, and Alan playing the melody and doing that incredible solo over it, and it was just amazing. And then he liked that little melody I had on Maid Marian, and he goes, oh, I like that melody. Can we do that? He goes, it reminds me of the old Robin Hood days of England, had that kind of vibe to it. And I didn't have a title for it. So he goes, hey, let's call it after Robin Hood's bat. He goes, Maid Marian. I said, okay. So that's why it's got the title Maid Marian.
That's amazing.
So anyway, so that's my story. So I had an amazing, almost a decade long run with Alan. We did Secrets.
How did the tours go, by the way? Like,
they were great.
I mean, how did you keep fresh yourself as a musician? Playing so many gigs on this really challenging music. How did you reinvent yourself every gig, or still? How do you do that?
Actually, that's the most amazing thing. I mean, as you get older, you realize that touring is kind of a hell, really. Touring, right?
It is,
there's no glamour in it whatsoever. You just pick up, you travel, set up, sound check, eat, play, go to bed, hang out, go to bed, get up, and it's just nonstop. I mean, I love traveling, so I love going to Europe and even the States. We go to all the different cities, so I came to the conclusion: if you don't enjoy the 2 hours that you're on stage, then it's just 24 hours of hell.
Yeah,
because and I realized, I was young at the time. I was having fun, but I realized that when we'd start, we used to start with a Tavakron. We'd start the night with that.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And I would be like in heaven every night. Like every night was a new night. We played 6 weeks straight. Maybe one night off a week. Different place every night, except New York or maybe Boston. We'd play a couple of shows, but
that's heavy.
New setup, play. And as soon as we started Tavakron, God, I was just like, it's fresh. There was no night where I went like, oh, not this again, or start thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow, or it would just, and every tune. And the other really cool thing about working with Alan, and I wish I could emulate this more, but he he never told you what to do ever, which could be frustrating sometimes. But in a way, he wanted that in his music. I think he never told anybody. He never told Chad or Gary what groove to play, when to play soft, when to play loud, when to play fast stuff, when to play slow stuff. Like, I mean, have you been a band leader? It's like,
yeah, sure. I've done like,
we always tell drummers what to do. It's terrible.
Never
thing.
Tell a drummer, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he would. So every night you could reinvent yourself. Like, you could play different stuff every night, and it would be okay, you know. And plus the changes are so beautiful and they're so challenging that you would try every night. You would try to do different things and look for different avenues to get through the harmony, find a new little thing. And in playing with guys like Gary, of course, and Chad and Jimmy Johnson, Schooley, all these different musicians I played with, then they listen so much and in tune. So wherever I wanted to take it, they would just go, you know.
Yeah.
They were never like, oh, that's not the way we do this. This is, you know, they never like that. It was just, oh, what's he? Okay, we'll go this direction, you know. If I wanted to get more ethereal, they were right there with me. If I wanted to get more rambunctious, they were right there, you know. And the cool thing with both Chad and Gary was that if I wanted to take another chorus, they would just go and they would lift it up, you know. They were never like, oh, this is the end, you know. It would leave it up to, you know. And so you can hear on some of those bootlegs on Devil, I'll just go and go.
Yeah.
And but I had a blast. It was my one chance to play over one chord, and I had a blast. And we just went for it. And those guys were great. And Alan would just take a break and listen, you know. And then he would play, and I would listen. And you know, the tours were great. And Alan was so much fun to hang with. He was just we had a ball of laughs every day and every night, and great stories he told about this and that. And so even the stories that were quite depressing and horrific, they would be funny. So we'd be laughing, you know.
Kinda,
yeah, he would like tell a horrific, depressing story, and then we'd all be laughing. Oh, can you? So he had that kind of thing. So we'd have a good time, and meeting all the people on the road. You know, his fans were just diehard fans, and it was all a great experience. I enjoyed I can't think of any moment that I didn't enjoy every night, every day, just hanging with those guys. So I was really fortunate, you know. I mean, I'm not the best keyboard player in the world, and there were a lot better players than me. So I was just fortunate to be there. And I think he saw that I kind of understood his music a little bit. Yeah, maybe because of two reasons. I was really into Joe Zawinul, like I said. And so Joe's music, the way he does synths and plays, I was really into that. And which is really similar to Alan, like a lot of that kind of stuff. And then also there's a local guitarist here that I played with right when I left Berkeley in 1979 by the name of Randy Roos. Mm-hmm. And he teaches at Berkeley. He teaches at Berkeley now, and in fact, we're playing gigs together again now.
He's on your last record before that one. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that one also. Like,
yeah, Randy, and he called me up to play in his band back in 1970. I was 20, I think. Mm-hmm. I just got married, and he called me up and asked me to play in his band, and no audition either. It was just a reference from another keyboard player that was in his band, and I'll always be indebted to him. His name is Frank Wilkins. And he said to me once, I knew Frank a little bit, and he heard me play. He liked my playing. And he was in Randy's band, and Frank left to go play with Angelo Bofield. So Randy needed a keyboard player. So Frank says, oh, you got to get Steve Hunt. He's a local guy. He's got synths. And so Randy called me, and I knew Randy. He was he's a big guy here in Boston area, one of the top guys. And I was like, oh, that'd be great. And I said, do you want me to audition? He goes, no, man, if Frank says you're the guy, then you're the guy. I'm like, oh, okay. So I didn't even have to audition for Randy's band. And Victor Bailey was the bass player, by the way.
That's what you have on the last album dedicated to Victor. Okay.
That tune that's on my list. We hadn't talked about Connections yet, but that tune, First Creation. It was a whole suite that I wrote when I was a student at Berkeley. There's four tunes to that Creation suite. You know, I was into progressive rock, so I liked these suites. And so, but when I started playing with Randy, he asked if I had any tunes. I said, "Oh, I have this tune, First Creation." So we used to play it in that band. And Victor, it kind of had this Jocko-ish kind of do-da-do-da. And Victor played it so amazing when he played that pattern, and he added some things, and he put some lyrics to. Victor was a funny guy, so from Philadelphia, funny. So he put some lyrics to that little bass lick. Do-da-do-da, do-da-do-da-do-da. He would, First Creation, what a sensation. First Creation, boogie around the nation. And he would sing that, and we'd be dying laughing, you know. And so you know, and he tragically passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And I was already working on that tune to do something with it, and I wanted to get Victor to play. He was teaching at Berkeley. I wanted to get Victor to play on it, and he was still able to play. And then, but by the time I started getting production, he kind of really went down, and he wasn't able to play anymore. So I got Evan Marion to play on that. Like just some
killing version. And Virgil on drums, man. It's
Virgil, yeah. And I met Virgil through Alan as well, because we did a couple of shows together with Virgil. And so when I put that tune together, and of course Randy Roos is on that tune too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that whole album, Connections, is sort of the reason I named it Connections, because everybody on that has some sort of connection to my past or my career throughout the few decades. And but that's a really special track, because I used to play that tune in 1979 with Randy, and then that's why we dedicated it to Victor for that thing. So anyway, yes, that was cool. So. But sorry about it. I'm rambling on about
no, please. I mean,
jumping around. So.
You have so much to say, you know. So it's like I love listening to that. I'm like a kid in a sandbox, just like okay. But you know, we mentioned Connections, and I wanted to ask you. You know, it's you mentioned Joe Zawinul, and there's a lot of Zawinul kind of ideas, and I hear Lyle Mace even, or someone like that. You know, I'm a huge fan of those guys, but you wrote amazing music, your compositions, and how did you imagine this Connections album? I mean, it's like the best of the best on that one, really. Like, I mean, it's Vinny Colaiuta,
all the musicians, yeah,
Nate Wood, I don't know, Etienne Mbappe, like everyone is on there. Like, how did you get this album together as a whole, and imagine who will play on which tune? Like, how did that go in your mind?
Well, unfortunate for everybody in the country, in the world. The coronavirus happened with COVID, but fortunately for me, because of that, there was nothing to do for that year. But I had started the project like before that all happened. And I had this idea of like, I had a few tunes together. In fact, that tune Carry On that I dedicated to Alan, my intentions a few years back was to see if I could get him to play a solo on it, because he was still around. I had the tune. I had sent it to Gary once, and asked if maybe he wanted to play. I had this idea of getting a few musicians together that I played with before, Gary, Jimmy, maybe Alan do a track, just kind of get things together. But it never really came together, and then Alan passed away, So we were in California doing the tribute for Alan at the Baked Potato, and Virgil was sort of leading the thing. We had all these different musicians. Jimmy Johnson came and played with us. It was a really nice tribute for Alan. We played a lot of the tunes, and but I was standing during the break. I was standing back talking to Jimmy Johnson, and I said, sometimes when I get nervous, I kind of start up. So, hey, I can't get my words out. So I knew what I wanted to say to Jimmy, because I wanted to ask him to play on this track that I had. And I just said, hey Jimmy, I have this track, and I don't know if you want, he just goes, Steve, send it to me. Send it to me. yes. I'm like, really? You want to? Would you do this? You know, like, because you know he's touring with with James Taylor, and he's got all the stuff, you know, Steve Gadd, and I'm like, he's not gonna have time to do this, you know. And he just goes, send it to me. So that was sort of the catalyst. I'm like, oh, maybe he wants to do this. I thought like, oh, that'd be, and so that was sort of like the spark that I'm like, well, if he wants to do it, maybe some other people want to, you know. So I sent him that Carry On and another tune, Quantum Entanglement, and then I contacted Chad, and then I contacted Gary. I said, hey, like, I'm thinking about doing this project, and I'd love to get you guys on a track, you know. He goes, and they both said, oh yeah, I'll do it, you know. And Gary was really nice to put together that thing, and then it kind of snowballed. I said, well, you know, I said, also I know some other people. Maybe I can get, you know, I was actually on that the tune I titled for my Cherokee Roots. It's called A Prayer for a New Day. And I used that Cherokee morning song.
Jimmy Haslip on bass. Yeah, I love that one.
I originally asked, I was going to try to get Gary Willis on there because there's a connection just with Alvin with that. I thought it'd be nice to have Gary, but he couldn't do it. He was, I think he lives there in Spain, right?
Yeah, he's in Spain.
And he was busy, couldn't do it. And then I thought, well, I know Jimmy Haslip now because we did this thing with Alan once. I sat in with him once, and Jimmy was playing, and I said, so I didn't know him that well, so I asked him, hey, listen, I have this. Would you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And he's just the sweetest guy, Jimmy Haslip, just the nicest guy, and I'm a huge fan from everything he's done. You know, the Yellow Jackets and all that, and so I would. All the guys, I just barely any instruction. I told them, I said, just here's the tune, here's kind of a chart, and do what you feel on it. And then that whole middle section where it's me and Chad and Jimmy, and I have this local percussionist, Jerry Leak, on percussion. I told Chad and Jimmy, I said, I just want this to be like a 3-way conversation. I'm noodling it, but it's not my solo. I want you guys to join in.
Kind of.
And Chad was the first to record. And by the way, because the COVID, everybody recorded remote.
Sure,
everybody,
remote,
except for Casey Sherrill recorded here at my studio, and the sax player Tucker Antel that recorded on a couple. He recorded here. They're local, and Jeff Lockhart, he came. But everybody else was remote. All the percussions. So it just kind of. I didn't have a huge plan out front. It was just that thing that Jimmy said, hey, send it to me. We'll do it. And so when he sent it back, I'm like, oh, this could be fun. And then it just snowballed. And then I would just start asking people, and it turned out to be 32 musicians on that, including my son and Chad's daughter that sang on that Cherokee song, and just other people. And like the percussion player Jorge, he's from Brazil, but I needed a percussion player on that tune Creation, and also on the very first track. It just needed that Zawinul. Yeah. And so I was like, I need a percussion player, not a Latin percussion, but like a world percussion player that needs that. And so I was sitting here in my studio just watching some Zawinul things, you know, and there's this live thing that back in 2006, I think, maybe. Great live concert. I don't know where it's in. It's in Vienna somewhere. I don't know where it is. The live concert outdoors, and I was just digging it. And then the camera pan, and then there's these 2 percussion players. One's an Indian guy, and this other guy, Brazilian guy, and he has a table full of stuff and his congas, and he's running around like hitting things and grabbing stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the guy I need. I don't know. So I had to search what his name was and who he was. And then I'm searching all over media. He's not on Facebook. He's not on Twitter. There's no other. And then I thought, well, maybe he's on Instagram. So I go on this, and there he is on Instagram. I find him. And I just sent him a little message on it. I said, you don't know me, but I saw you. I felt like an idiot. Hey, I saw you play on this track with Zalman. You want to do something with me? You know, but he's a super sweet guy. And And he's like, oh, and I gave him a brief history of who I am. And then he's like, oh, I'd love to. And that's how he's the percussion he did on those 2 tracks is just
beautiful.
I can't explain it how brilliant that was. I mean, it's just like brilliance percussion. When he sent me the tracks, I thought there was a mistake because I got the files from the studio, and there were 23 tracks. 23. I'm like, something must have happened, and then I put them up, and there was a lot of blank spaces. And I'm like, something didn't transfer right. Because I told him, I said, just play. I said, Jorge, just play one time through, do your stuff, do another time through. Don't work on it too much. Just then he goes, So, but what he did is he arranged the whole percussion.
Really orchestrated it. Yeah.
He orchestrated and he didn't have that much time. I still don't know how he did that, because he has these little triangle hits and certain things. He would listen to. I hit a brass thing and there's a triangle. He puts like a little thing here and there's just stuff. And I had 23 tracks of percussion I had to go through, and all of it's just perfect and genius, and he did that for both tracks. And I'm like, oh my God, the level of musicians on that whole thing, I had to pinch myself, and the way I got on that one tune, I kind of recreated Maid Marian. Yeah. And I titled it Memories of Sherwood, Sherwood Forest.
Alex Mahatrika and Vinny. Yeah,
and Alex plays on, and there's a funny story. I don't know how much time we have. I'm rambling on.
No.
There's a funny story with Alex in that track.
Oh, please. I know Alex. We're friends. We did something.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's great.
Please.
Yeah. Alan used to call him the Austrian Holdsworth. But they had Alan definitely loved Alex, so that track I was trying to get different people play on it, and then I was in my studio working out one time, and I was just and Secrets came up on my playlist and was playing, and I'm like, oh man, Vinny, man, it's like, and then Maid Marian came up, and it's Vinny, and I'm like, I said, man, I'm kind of recreating that melody of Maid Marian, and I thought, I wonder if Vinny would want to do this, So I called Jimmy Johnson. I'm like, do you think Vinny would want to do this? He goes, oh yeah, well, he would love to do it. He gets, and so that's how. So I contacted him, and then eventually he decided to do it, and he did it and sent 2 takes.
Wow.
And it's just freaking amazing.
Yeah.
His playing on that. He's just.
See the monster.
It's funny because I sent them what I had originally done with somebody who was over, and it was a completely different. It was more of a rudiment thing. It was like kind of a different vibe. I said, this is a tune. Don't just do what you want, Vinny. And he sent back this whole thing. It was just 100%. I love it because it's just 100% Vinny. He just goes for it. And at the very end, where the whole thing is kind of like tapering off, I think most drummers would start playing light, no backbeat. He's just playing through it, which is beautiful. I'm like, that's fantastic, man. Like, it's and of course if you hear what he did under my solo, he reacts so well, like all those guys. And so
crazy. Yeah.
I'm playing, I start going fast, I start noodling and dusting off the keyboard, and then all of a sudden Vinny joins in, and he goes like for, I don't know, 3 measures with me, and he finishes off with a big, just like amazing, I had a great year doing it because these guys would send me the tracks.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I would put them up, and I would be here in my studio dancing and enjoying, like, oh my God, whoa, by myself, of course. Nobody got to see me. But and then when Gary Husband sent his track on Carry On, because Jimmy had already done his thing, so I sent it to Gary, and he did it. And when he sent it back, it was just me and Gary and Jimmy, which was the first band I played with Alan. Yeah, but there's no Alan, right? It's just me and we play. And he got to the end of it. I heard Gary's playing, and of course Jimmy. And I was like in tears. I was like, oh my God, this is, not because of my tears, just like that whole. Yeah, sure. It was like it was Alan's band, but without Alan, So, I was really really moved by that. So there's a lot of emotions during that whole process. The track with Billy Cobham, that I played with Billy for like.
Yeah, I've read that. How did that? Because there's no albums, right, or records.
No, because
how did that happen? Yeah,
it was just another fluke. It was like no audition. It was same kind of thing. It was before I started doing the Jazz Explosion. So it was 1985.
85, okay.
And I was playing with I was in Tom Brown's band. I don't know if you remember. He was a trumpet player.
Sure.
And we had fun with that. And but Billy had a band together that was a lot of Boston locals.
Gil Goldstein was, right? And Tim Land.
Well, this is after that. So it was Jerry Ekins on keyboards,
okay.
Dean Brown on guitar, Saw Davis on percussion, and Baron Brown, who we just lost a year ago, on bass. And that was the band. And so evidently, like what happened was there was this one kind of little tour or something happening, and then Dean Brown couldn't do it. I think he was going out with maybe with Michael Brecker or the Brecker brothers. He wanted to do something else, and so they didn't have a guitar player. So my friends who were Jerry and Baron, they said, "Hey Billy, once you get another keyboard, let's do 2 keyboards instead of a guitar."
Oh, wow. And
Billy's like a kid. I don't know if you ever met him. He's like,
no.
I could see him like, yeah, I like that, man. Yeah, 2 keyboards, man. I like that idea. And so this is I may have told the story before. It's a funny story. This is back when we just have phones on the wall, right? 1984, 1985. And so I'm in the kitchen and the phone rings and I pick it up and I go, hello. And this guy goes, hi, this is Billy Cobham. And I got your number from Jerry Ekins. And I was checking to see, and I interrupted him. I said, excuse me, who is this? He goes, Billy Cobham. And it didn't register to me. And he goes on, and then he said, I have this tour and Baron Brown. So I just didn't make the connection. And I asked him like, so who is this again? Billy Cobham, the drummer. And I go, oh, I mean, no, I'm sorry. I'm getting this whole thing wrong. He was saying Bill.
Oh, okay.
He was saying Bill. He's got the whole time he's going, this is Bill Cobham, Bill. And I just wasn't getting it. I was like, and then he finally goes, no, this is Bill Cobham, the drummer. And I go, oh my God, Billy Cobham. And he goes, yes, Bill Cobham. I guess but nobody knows him as Bill. I think he likes to be called Bill. On his Facebook, he's Bill. So I felt like a complete idiot because I was going, who is this? And of course he's like huge and big influence on everybody. And and then I yelled at, oh, Billy. And he goes, yeah, Bill Cobham. And then I'm like super excited. And he asked me to go. He said, oh, Dean Brown can't do the tour. So the guy suggested we use Tiki. And so I wanted to get you to do it. I said, oh, I'll do it, No. And I remember going up to my wife, like after that phone call, I'm like, I can't believe it, man. Billy, whatever, Cobham called me and wants me to do a tour. And I was like so excited, So, but they had just done a record, and then I was in that for like 6 months. We went to Israel. We did the Europe thing, and we did some gigs around the States. And then right at the end of that, that's when I got contacted by the guy that started up the Jazz Explosion, and he wanted me to be the musical director for it. So I just left, and I went and did that, which was cool because then I met Stanley, and then through Stanley I met Alan. So again, there was no audition with Billy. He just called me up, and I made a fool of myself. Like who is this? But nowadays you have like caller ID.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
It's like I don't even think I had a message machine back then. It's just you just pick it up, see who it is.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how I got that gig, and that was really cool. So I saw him while I was doing this thing. I had this one concept tune that I was thinking about getting I don't know. I was thinking about getting Dave Weckl and some other guys to play on it. And then so I had played these chords, and then I wrote this chord progression that's like these 3 minor chords that keep ascending in whole steps. And I just wanted like a jam kind of thing. And then so I see Billy on Facebook, and he posted up this thing that said, and I'd talked to him a couple of messages before, whatever, we said hi and whatever. But he posted up this thing. He goes, hey, if anybody needs the lessons, you know, because during COVID, everybody was doing Zoom lessons because what else are you going to do, you know? So he goes, if anybody needs lessons, I'm putting together my studio, and we can have lessons. And I saw the word studio, and I'm like, wait a minute. If he's got a studio, I wonder if he'll record this thing. So I go, hey, Bill. I think now when I type, I say Bill. Hi, Bill. Listen, would you want to do this track with me? And he's like, I'd love to, man. Yeah, that'd be great. You know. So he didn't actually have the studio together. So I had him get a studio in Switzerland where he lives, and that's why the drums sound so amazing. He went to the studio with like the guy had the best mics, and it's unbelievable. And so he sent me the track, and that the very first part of the tune was me playing these chords that I just improvised. The beginning and ending of that tune, if you know that tune a little bit.
After re-listening, yeah.
It's at the beginning and ending. You'll hear the string pad. It's actually the same string pad I used on Prelude, which on hard hat area. There's this patch I put together with the Oberheim DX7s. And so I used the same thing. And a while back, I just improvised this big long chord progression. It was just off the top of my head. I just played all these chords. And then I got this idea. What I did is I split that in half, and I moved it like this, and then I put this whole solo section in the middle with these chords I wrote and kind of a thing. And then I asked Schooley. I said, hey, man, Schooley, do you want to play on this? We can have this trade section. And I think at the time I was thinking about getting Scott Henderson to play the third solo, you know, because Scott and Alan were good friends. I was trying to make a connection, but Scott couldn't do it either. He was right in the middle of doing another record. So I didn't really know what to do, but I asked Schooley to play on it. So Schooley played to my track. And I told him, I said, I have these chords out front that I just improvised. So I kind of transcribed my progression, whatever, I figured out what the chords were. And I sent it to him. I said, can you do a thing like Alan did on Prelude on Hard Hat Area? Just here's the chords I played, and that's that Prelude on that. I just improvised those chords out front. That's when we were in the studio. I just played some chords, and then Alan took to his house and he put that solo on top of the chords I played on Prelude, and of course, amazing, right? Like, it's just beautiful, and he has a sense of just hearing something and knowing how to shape it. It's really so Schooley said, yeah, I'll do that. So he played that solo on those chords out front, and then the tune happens and we trade. And then I sent it to Billy, and then I asked him to do it. He said he would. So I sent it to him. I said, you're going to do the third solo. So it's me I'm doing like a guitar thing, and then Schooley, and then you play the third solo. It's a series of 3 minor chords, and then and that keeps repeating 3 times. And he played it, and so Billy said, yeah. So he sent me back the track, and he was originally just supposed to come in on the where the whole solo thing comes. It was just supposed to be me and Schooley. But when the track ran, Billy played through that with me and Schooley, which was really cool. It was really nice. He just did all the stuff and little snare drum work, and so I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's like 3 of us just improvising. Yeah. And it didn't get in the way. It was just really nice, And then I was working on the mix, and then I soloed up Billy's drums, and I was just doing things, and I listened to it by himself. And I'm like, holy shit, this is like a composition. Yeah. Like a drum composition. And it reminded me back when I was in his band. He would start off a tune sometimes just doing this stuff. Nothing flashy, nothing like, oh, look how fast. You just do these really kind of orchestral compositions. Yeah, like a little snare drum work, which is amazing. And so I was listening to it. I'm like, man, this would be really cool to lift and put it just right in front of the tune and then me and Schooley has our thing, and then we all come in. So I asked Billy, I say, hey man, that whole thing you played it, do you mind if I just put that in the front and feature you as a solo? And he goes, yeah, man, do what you want. Those old cats, I don't think the old cats, like, they don't, like Alan, even, I don't think they thought too much. They just like, yeah, it's just, it's like, it's a really kind of childlike behavior. It's like, yeah, dude, I think my generation and we think too much,
Probably, yeah.
But I think that generation, they just did, it wasn't too much thought, and they just, which I loved. And so, yeah, so that's why that tune has that like whole thing out front. And then me and Schooley play, and then we come and do our trades. And then at the very end of it, because I split those two chords, we did that, and then Billy played over it, and it ends with him. So I was totally thrilled that he did that. I mean, because I had that one little segment where I played with him and did some tours. It was fun,
That's amazing.
And so there was another connection. Yeah. So everything just worked out really beautifully through the whole record with the connections and of people, and people I played with, or some people I admired, like just all the people who played on it. But I was really happy about the tracks that like Chad played on, and Gary and Jimmy Johnson and Schooley, because that was like the big part of my life. Those 4 guys during that one decade, And there's one track I was trying to get Stanley Clarke to play on, this track that is called Full Plate, and it's kind of a Latinish chickish kind of tune. And I did a recording with Tom Breckline, amazing drummer.
Yeah, I love Tom. Yeah,
I love his. He's just and all the stuff he has with Chick, and I used to listen to him on all those records. And I saw him with Gary Willis and with Wayne Shorter when they were in the band together. Yeah. And so I asked if he would do it, and he said yeah. So he recorded his track, and then I was trying to get Stanley to play bass on that track because I thought it'd be cool, kind of a connection thing. And but I think he's scoring a movie or something big, so so it didn't work out. But then I got Matt Garrison to play, and he just did it amazing. So it was so good.
Not Stanley Clarke with Matt Garrison. So it's like it's like
it's like it's like the whole record's like I'm looking at all these musicians. I'm like, what am I doing on this thing?
Oh, come on.
It's just like all these guys, they should have got some good player to play on it after all that. But it's one. I mean, it's definitely one of the highlights of my whole career and doing music, was doing that record, and I'm just so happy about how that thing turned out, and everybody putting their time in for it, and the response that people gave me about the whole thing. So in the end, I've been really fortunate with all the people I've played for,
But would you like to bring this Connections album to the road in any sort of format? Were you thinking about it, or
I was well, that's another thing. I was thinking about that, like some form of that. I was going to ask Chad if he would like to do. I was thinking that what I could do is maybe go to the West Coast, and I could get Chad and Jimmy Haslip or Jimmy Johnson even if he. I'm nervous around Jimmy Johnson. I don't know why. He's like
a cool guy, right?
Yeah, and he's cool, and he's so together, and everything is just
he's amazing.
Everything he does is just top, and I'm kind of like scrappy and whatever happens, and so maybe do some gigs on the West Coast, and Alex is there. Alex could play, So I've been thinking about like some form of something where I could get some of those guys together and do maybe some East Coast stuff, get Evan to do some things, or go to Europe and maybe get Schooley and Gary, and we could do some of the tunes. And
you should do that, man.
And then I'd have to get to do a lot of those tunes because they wind up being really big productions, just because I get going as a producer and like, I'll add this and I'll have that, and then I'm like, how am I going to do this live? So I'd probably have to get like some sax player, a guitar player. Right, maybe if Jorge would do like the percussion for me, that would be a dream, put some shows together. I don't know, it would be great. I don't have any representation. I have no manager. I have no booking agency. I don't know. It's just
but you should really do a European tour with that one. I mean, it's just like, I think that you would easily get like a 10-day tour together. I think
that's what I was thinking. Something like a week and a half, 2 weeks of something, and I think that's the way it is these days. Also, like, if unfortunately, if I just went on the road on myself and then I got my band, it would be really hard to book and get people to come. But if you piece together people with different,
definitely
similar kind of level names or some higher names, and then people will come to. I understand the whole thing. People will go to that, and you can get So it's not really a band, but you kind of putting things together.
Definitely,
that's it's just the way it is. I think that the days of the '80s is kind of over. Yet you kind of have to do that. So a lot of those tours going out are doing that kind of thing where. You get a Mike Stern on there, and you get a Steve Smith, and you get a whatever, and then John Patitucci, and then people will show up to that,
Sure.
And it'll be good, It's just not like a real band, but it'll be good, So I was thinking about that. If I have to get up the nerve to ask those guys to do it first.
Oh, it's so cool.
They'd be like, "Are you nuts?" Like, but that would be nice, because I think a lot of those tunes on that album are playable and to do live, like Carry On, and
I think it would be cool jam tunes. You could extend them probably live and have a drum solo then and stuff like that. It's like
exactly. Yeah, that's a good idea. A lot of that stuff. Like a Cherokee song is just it's actually basically a jam thing after that melody. So anyway, so it's a fun. It would be a fun thing to do, but we'll see what happons. So
but what are your otherwise your plans like for the next upcoming months? I mean, like, are you planning playing on some new records or like projects?
Oh, well, I also do a lot of producing, or some, not a lot, but some producing. So I have my my own trio with this local bass player. He's from Albania, but he lives here in Boston now since I think 1998 or something. His name is Irvin Demo, Irvin Demo, and I always say Demo, like, I don't know, I like it's French because he's European. So I if I just say Demo, Irvin Demo, it sounds too American. So Irvin Demo, but it's just Demo. Great bass player. Really cool styles, and so we did this record. We have a band together, and we did this record called it's a band called Electric Market.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
it's spelled with all K's because that's the way they would spell it in Albania with all K's. So it's spelled Electric Market, and it's a real. I love this band because it's there's none of the tunes that are really hard. The tunes I wrote it's really a jam kind of band. It's like a chord here, and then we lay on a chord and we jam and do all this stuff. Kind of like the later Zolvanov stuff where you just sit on a vibe. And it's a throwback to the early 70s too, when we just jam on some stuff. So there's nothing that's really difficult on the tunes. It's not a lot of changes. But the way we do it is pretty complex. So people think it's complex music, but it's not. It's really an interactive thing. We all just play off each other, and I get a chance with my keyboard setup to do. I do vocoder, and I got a breath controller, and I have all these patches with weird stuff, and I have pedal board where I can switch sounds and put different things on the spur of the moment. It's a real free kind of thing. So that's a really cool band. So we did one record. We're working on a new one, and hopefully that'll be out. I also have a jazz trio. Like a traditional jazz trio thing too,
like with acoustic piano and straight ahead jazz. Which I'm not really a bebop player, but I play one at home sometimes. No, my dad was a bebop jazz saxophone player. Yes, I didn't know that. Okay.
So I grew up in a household where Charlie Parker and John Coltrane and Frank Sinatra was always playing in the house, and he took us to see all those concerts in Houston where I grew up. I saw Woody Herman, Frank Sinatra, I saw Jimmy Smith on the organ. I saw all those Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, big band, all that stuff, and of course, and those gigs. But I was into like Yes, and then Jimi Hendrix, and then Return to Forever, and and then Weather Report and that kind of stuff. But I went to Berkeley, and then later I realized I need to learn how to play the traditional stuff. So I studied a lot and started doing gigs and doing more bebop kind of stuff. I could play like I could do like McCoy Tyner Chick Corea over standards, right? Like pentatonic, whatever. But I didn't know how to play the traditional bebop lines. So I had to actually go study it in that feel. And
that's amazing.
But it came a little quick because it was already in my ear from my dad. My dad would like, hey, play some. He would sing this to me. I'm like, you're weird, Dad. But it was a good thing because it was already in my ear, like how to phrase bebop. I don't know if you play that style too, but it's
sure. I mean, I don't know how to play it, but I know.
Yeah, it's not part of my generation or even yours.
No, me neither.
Like,
me neither.
We have to go learn it. So I started a trio. I don't know, 15 years ago, with a bass player here, Bruce Gertz, and a great
Bruce,
drummer,
really?
Jack.
Oh, wow, amazing.
Yeah, Bruce. Yeah.
Oh, sure. I love his records with Abercrombie.
He's got tons of it. Yeah. So we do these sessions in my studio all the time. In fact, we have a new trio now. It's called Trio Now is the name of the trio. And Jack Diefendorf is our drummer, who's the local drummer. One of my favorite drummers. Oh my God. He's he never got out of the Boston area, but I'm telling you, he's just an amazing drummer. The musicality and the listening is just on some other level. I just love the way he plays. And we just did a bunch of sessions a few years ago, and then we're putting together a new record. It's going to be out maybe the beginning of next year, and with just a trio. And Bruce is actually writing most of the tunes for this. I have one or two songs, but he's a great composer.
I love
he writes his.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of great tunes. So we have enough recording. What we're doing is we're going to put out a trio record with just the trio and 3-piece, acoustic piano, acoustic bass. And then we have all these other tunes we did where we're adding other people to it. So we call it Trio Now with Friends. So I just the other night we recorded this guy, Mike Turek. He's a harmonica player. Mm-hmm. And he played the melody and some improvisation on a tune. Jerry Bagonzi and George Garzone plays, because Bruce knows them from way back, and
Garzone played on your first album, right? Also,
and he played on a track on that was a great. He's amazing. I was nervous trying to get him on that, but that goes back to my dad, because that tune I called it Wake Up. And it's based on a Coltrane tonic series, but like Central Park, where it's 4 chord. It's a 4-chord tone, a diminished tonal series instead of the tritone like Giant Steps. Yeah. And so I called it Wake Up because my bedroom was here, and there was like a foyer where my dad's stereo system was, and so it's 6:30 in the morning. To get me up to go to school, he would crank Love Supreme. Ooh. I mean, to the volume 12, and who's going to sleep through that? I'm like, oh, Jesus, Dad, what is that? And that's how I'd wake up every morning, because he tried to do it by, hey, get up, it's time to go to school. And I couldn't get it. So he would just crank that. And so anyway, that's kind of a tribute to my dad. And George played on that track. Amazing. He's just sight read through that thing.
Really? Oh man, it's all.
I brought it to the studio, and he just goes. He goes, hey, I gave him a chart and a tape before, but he shows up and he's looking at the speaker. He's like, man, that sounds great, man. He never even listened to it, never looked at it. So we get in there. I kind of tell him. He goes, yeah, that looks good. And then what you heard on the record, he played. He just played, and he played through those changes like they were butter. He did a second take, but I wound up using the first one.
It's like Brecker and all these guys.
They just look at it like, oh yeah, I know, yeah, okay, it's cool. And he ran it, and he was like, it's just amazing. So it's kind of cool to have him back on this thing, and it's just the blues that Bruce Gertz wrote, and then Bruce went to their house because it was kind of still during COVID, and he had Jerry play on his solos and trades, and and then George played, and they trade. So it's and then I have a bunch of other tunes that I'm going to get Tim Miller to play on a track, and speaking of that, it's kind of really in the beginning works, but I produced I recorded here in my studio like the last 4 Tim Miller records. The trio things.
The trio stuff.
Have you heard those?
Yeah. I mean, such a huge
they're all recorded here in my studio.
I didn't know that.
And I mixed them and everything. But this last one is with Nate Woods and Sam on bass. This last one, I actually got producing credits. I helped him with a lot of stuff, and so he was nice enough, but he gave me producing credits on it. So I kind of helped him produce this last one, and we did it all through COVID. So everything was Zoom. And he would send files, but the basic tracks were done here in my studio with Nate Wood, and then Sam on bass, and the same band that he had the record before, and so that's where I met Nate, and I got this. He set up right here in my studio, and I got to like watch him play. I don't know if you ever seen him live.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, of course. I mean, it's a monster, like incredible.
It's insane. I mean, you're hearing all of the stuff happening out of the speakers. And like that can't be just one. That's got to be overdubs, 2, 3 people. And I just look over here. He's sitting right there on the drums, and it's just him. But all the stuff is going on, and a solid groove. Yeah. And then all the stuff is going on. I don't know how he does it, So that's why I asked him. I'm like, because he knew me, so I asked him to play on that first track, and so I got him on that track there.
Yeah,
but so I asked him after we put that record out. I asked him. I said, hey, would you want to do like a duo record with me? Just, and he was really into it. So I didn't know if he wanted, because he likes the trio thing, and I love his tunes and his voicing.
Yeah,
so
he's amazing.
Everything is so beautiful. Alan loved him too. They were kind of friends at the end, and Alan really appreciated the fact that he was influenced by him, but that he had his own thing. Yeah. And Tim's, have you interviewed Tim? You should interview him. He's
emailed
a great cat, just the nicest guy.
If you have his email, please send it to me. I mean, I would love to do this with him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll talk to him. He's kind of a shy guy. Actually, he's a family man, just like, but he's such a genius, and I love working with him and doing his thing. So I asked him if he wanted to do a duo record. So I already have like 4 tunes that I've written, and then maybe he'll introduce some tunes. So we hadn't really picked out the band yet. So I'll talk to him about, I may do like a connections things where I get some different people to play on different tracks, something like that. Maybe. I mean, I have one track that I hear Chad playing on. It should be perfect. It's got some metric modulation things, and I can just hear, in a whole sequence. There's a whole sequence of chords that I wrote that keeps going. It's not like what was that Allen tune where he had that sequence of chords? Dee-do, dee-do, bo, dee-dum, dee-do. That we used to do it part of our zone, but the name escapes me. But anyway, it's a sequence of chords that I was going to have a drummer solo over it, the whole sequence. And then I'm like Chad would be great over that. So anyway, we're going to decide if we're going to use different musicians or try to make it a solid one band or something,
Fantastic.
But that's coming up. I have Trio Now with Friends. We're going to do a new Electric Market record. I just got through producing a record with this guitarist, Kingsley Durant, who's used to be a local guitarist here. He used to see me back in the day with Randy Roos in Boston, but he lives in Kentucky now, and great guitar player, more of a kind of Eric Johnson or more of a blues kind of rock kind of thing, and writes these great tunes. So I produced the record is coming out. I produced the whole thing, and I played a lot of B3 organ on it, which I love.
Beautiful, man.
Mostly Fender Rhodes. There's no sense on it. It's just Fender Rhodes, B3. There's one acoustic piano thing, gospel thing. A couple of things where I use my sampled Rhodes on, but with some effects. But it's really, and then Tom Breckline is playing drums on it. Did an amazing job. And then Roscoe Beck is playing bass on it.
Oh man,
which was a treat. This first time I worked with him, and just a treat to have. Every track he sent back was just a gem. Perfect sound in the pocket. Everything just a treat. So the album's coming out we had just finished that one. What else?
That's a lot.
I don't. Yeah, I got some other ideas of stuff. I don't know. Just you know, I'm sure there's something else. I just can't think of it. But I don't know. I try to keep doing stuff, and I'm teaching at Berkeley part time there. I've been there.
Like, well, you know, just next
I have that. It keeps me grounded, you know. But I love that. The students are great, and every once in a while, man, it's like great because you know I'm an old guy now, but like there'll be a kid, you know, he's like 19 or something, 18 even, like, and he'll come in. I'm like, oh hi, I'm Steve Hunt, and then finally they'll go, oh I know your work with Alan Holdsworth. I'm like, how old are you? And like they're like huge fans of, you know, the young generation, and it's a cool thing, you know. So it's great to see that. I mean, of course, his music is so amazing, but it's great to see like the young people still into it and hearing it and listening and learning from it. And but there's a few students I'll teach some like funnels and a few other tunes too. And
well, if you think about it, it's like 30 years ago. So you know, basically, it's like in '85 thinking of Elvis.
Yeah.
If you think about in these terms, so it's, you know, it's history in a way already.
It's a long history away. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and so a lot of times that gets lost. I mean, there's even guitar players that don't know who he is, you know, but that's, you know, it's normal. But when you find people that discover it, and then it's such great stuff. Once you discover it, you can't go away. You're there, and it's just, so I went to see Billy Cobham play here in Boston like a month ago. So I went to the concert, and Dean Brown was playing, and also Tim Landers was playing bass. I was like old friends they're all Boston guys and old friends from that. And afterwards I was talking to some people, and then there was this young kid, like in high school, maybe, I don't know, looked like he was 15, and he was standing there. And then when I got finished, he was a really nice kid. He walked up and he goes, are you Steve Hunt? I'm like, oh yeah. He goes, Steve Hunt with the Allan Holdsworth band? I'm like, oh. And I was like, you're like 15. Like, turns out he goes, oh, I love Alan, man. I'm like huge fan. Like, and he goes, I didn't know you were living here in Massachusetts. And he like recognized me from a video or something. Well, but yeah, I'm like, I told him, I said, man, Alan would be really impressed, because every once in a while we'd have a really young person at our concerts. Like we'd play, and if it was an appropriate place, and there would be a few kids, like, you know, junior high kids, like 10, 12, that were big fans of his back then. And he was so impressed with that. It's like somebody would check out his music at that early age, you know? Yeah,
it's incredible. Yeah.
And understand it and love it, you know, on an emotional level, you know? And so I told the kid that. I said, "Why, Alan would be happy to hear about, you know, you liking his music at this young age, you know, because
that's incredible." Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard. His music's hard for me to understand.
Oh,
so I don't know how a young person, but you know, if you just listen to Alan's music on an emotional level and forget about the complexities of harmony and solos and technical thing, you just experience on an emotional level. It's just another world, you know.
It drives you and leads you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
So that's great. So, but anyway, yeah. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. Maybe a few other projects, but I have my studio here that I just come up and noodle around, do things, and have fun. I tell my wife I'm going to the studio to work. I have work to do. But you're a musician, you know.
I know how that goes.
Yeah. She has to think I'm working at least, you know. But I just over here have fun noodling with my synths and making sounds, and I don't know, you know. And eventually, it's maybe a new tune will happen or whatever. But I'm really excited about this duet record with Tim.
Oh, me too, man. I'm looking forward to
that's going to be really great. I just love his playing. It's been so fun working with him over the last few years, for a while now, actually, just on these records and watching him play and hearing
anything with him. He records so rarely, you know, so I'm looking forward to hear anything he comes up with.
That's why I was nervous about asking him, because he has this thing, and he does so well, and it's a beautiful thing, and so I didn't know if he'd want to do a collaboration, but he was really into it. So I'm really excited about that. And so and then my jazz stuff. So and then I'm still practicing classical. So like I said, I'm working on a Beethoven sonata or stuff, and I have a classical teacher. He's a Russian kid.
You have the energy of a teenager, man. Like really, when you talk about these things, I'm like, man, like I think I'll go practice now. And it's almost midnight here now. So.
I was right before I came to join you. I was just practicing. I'm like, oh my god, I suck. I can't play. So it's mentally it's bad, but it's good for you. Like,
oh yeah, definitely.
To like struggle and work and so and it's you have to keep up the technique. It's hard. If I don't do it for a while, you can feel it. And it's like, I gotta, so I'll play a bunch of Chopin etudes or some other things and just to get the fingers to work again. So, and it keeps up my reading. You have to read, the stuff. So it keeps up my reading chops. Of course, it's just beautiful music. Yeah. And I learned so much. Well, like this Beethoven, I'm learning so much about his voice leading, and with Chopin too, the voice leading is just like perfection. And if you can master the voice leading, then I could be Bill Evans, right? Because like that's mastered voice leading.
Oh man, that's
so. But I learned too much from McCoy and Chick, so I just I just move stuff around too much. But I still study. I still try to study like the voice leading concept and the movements and stuff. I don't know. You know who's like amazing at that is Goldings, Larry Goldings.
Oh man, I love Larry. Yeah,
he's amazing. And I see his Instagram, and then I watch it. I'm like, holy, his voice leading concept and movement is just like it's like Chopin.
He did this one amazing record you should check out. It's called Awakening with Paul Motion and Larry Grenadier. It's an acoustic piano. He rarely does acoustic piano entirely, but check out that one, man. It's like
I just ran across that today. I just ran across like an advertisement for, or something. I'm like, I got to check this out.
It's
and
awesome.
He's like, he's just an amazing. Yeah. So I'll go to his Instagram every once in a while just to get inspired and steal a few of his ideas of voice leading and counterpoint, and it's really great. So it's fun to keep on listening and learning and studying and growing and changing. I mean that's Alan did that. I mean what he did with Bill Bruford and Jean-Luc Ponty, and then IOU was not him when I joined the band. And then by the time we recorded Hard Hat Area, and then he was different. And then by the time he did 16 Minute Tane, he was different again.
Completely, yeah.
New ideas. Even one time he called me. This is years after I played. He called me up. He seemed really upset. I'm like, "What's the matter, Alan?" He goes, man, I don't think I have any new notes, man. He was really concerned. I'm like, I think you're going to be all right, Alan. You've had plenty of new notes, and I have a feeling there's going to be plenty more new notes to come. And sure enough, he put out some nice things, and
I love that.
He had some new notes, But it kind of got you insight into the way he thought. He wasn't content with just, oh, I did that, so, and it was good. He was like. He's more like, I did that. I got to do something new.
Yeah.
And he always could. And then he got a little concerned, like I saw an interview with Paul McCartney once, and he said that he goes, I'm worried. He was an older guy, and he goes, I'm worried I can't write a new song anymore. I mean, the guy has like thousands of number one hits, and so. Yeah. And he's still worried that he can't write a new song. Of course he did, and keeps. But and I'm like, wow, it's kind of inspiring because I'm like, oh, he's, these greats. You think it just comes, but they keep writing new stuff and thinking of some. So I try to keep myself in that mode, just to keep fresh and when I write something, and sometimes it just comes. Sometimes I figure some things out. I don't know. So.
That's amazing.
You're a composer too, right? You compose.
Yeah, I write. Yeah. I try. Yeah, writing music, but then I listen to some true composers, and I always get stuck with this idea that I wrote something. I come up with a 7/4 groove or whatever, like some changes, like whatever. And I'm like, shit, man, I wrote it like 4 years ago already, and then I just put it on a sheet paper, like. But
that's first creation was I was 19 when I wrote that. and it came out in 2020 or 2021. So yeah, that's probably the record for my writing. It's like that was a while back, but yeah. So
cool.
yeah, you never know what you know. You can reinvent something,
definitely.
or a little idea from that can spur something different. You know. So, but anyway, so
cool.
Anyway, and also you mentioned. Do you know Greg Bindian?
Yeah, I mean, I love that pianissimo trio you guys did. I love that stuff, man.
Oh,
sure.
I hadn't run across too many people that have heard that. You know, that's speaking of free stuff. That he I think I was playing with Alan in New York, and so he came backstage and introduced himself, and he played with Cecil Taylor.
Yeah, he's like really free stuff. And
everything. And he told me, I said, when I was a kid, I had a Cecil Taylor. I was enthralled by the idea, and I used to do that too. I just sit it, you know, like I was telling you, I just play whatever, and it's kind of like Cecil Taylor, and there's a little bit of that on the Excursions and Images, some of that stuff, you know, just like just going for it. But I said, oh, that's cool, you played with Cecil Taylor and stuff, and so we struck up a friendship, and then he wanted to do these. He was also a composer, but really weird stuff.
Yeah.
But I loved it. And he would write these things, and I couldn't read it because it was like so angular and like that. So sometimes I would just play shapes that I look like it, but he was cool. I don't think I was playing the exact notes he wrote. It just went like like, and 12-tone stuff, maybe. I don't know how you write. It's just, and he would write a voicing, like, and it would just be this cluster, and I go, okay, it's in this range of the piano, and I just play something, you know. But he was really into it, but a lot of that music was just free. Like we did 2 records, and there was one tune he wrote called Torrents. I don't know if it's on that record, but it's just a 1-page thing. He had these little ideas, but the whole thing is totally free. And a lot of free stuff. So we had a lot of great time with him. And then he started that band. So I'm not really into cover bands, right? But we had a cover band.
Really, I didn't
back
know.
In the early 2000s. It was a Mahavishnu.
Oh yeah, band. Yeah, exactly.
And so he started this thing, and then he goes, "Hey, you want to do this thing?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know some Jan Hammer licks, you know." And so we started. We started finding charts, or he started finding charts to all the Mahavishnu stuff, or Birds of Fire and Intermounting Flame. And then we started doing these rehearsals, and we started doing some gigs. And I think there's a live record he put out of some of that stuff. And he called it the Mahavishnu Project.
Yeah, exactly.
But one gig we did, somebody introduced us as the Mahavishnu Orchestra. We're like, no, we're not the real thing. We're just the project, you know. But yeah, so I used to joke, I'm like, yeah, I'm in a cover band, you know, but that cover band is Mahavishnu.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're like, oh. So we did one gig in New York, and at the bottom line, where we played the complete Intermounting Flame and a complete Birds of Fire, like 2 sets.
That's heavy stuff.
And then I had to drive back home to Boston after that. I was like, I was spent. But that was a lot of fun, because in fact, one gig, John McLaughlin showed up. Seriously? He came. Wow. And then we got Rick Lard and Jan Hammer to show up at another gig. Ooh. So I got to meet Jan Hammer. He's like he's one of the greats of the same era, you know, like
70s.
Yeah, that was a fun band with Greg, and I think Greg is off doing some other stuff, and but those trios we had were a lot of fun.
Yeah, with John Lockwood, man.
And we do some gigs in New York, and a lot, but there was so much freedom in that, and he loved real free stuff, so we would just go off on these things and play free. To be honest, I don't know if I would like to listen to a night of that, or even but I'm telling you, like, playing it, performing it is like so much fun. And then I think maybe live people would get that kind of thing with it.
The live vibe is quite cool.
Yeah,
such music.
Yeah, it's like it's just freedom at this peak. You know, you just there's no always that free music I always describe as it's either you can't be right, or you don't have a right or wrong with that kind of music, but you do have a good or bad, right?
Oh, definitely decisions. Yeah.
So you have good or bad, but there's nothing wrong or right. You can't say, oh, I think you missed the scale. Sure, that's the right voice leading on that voicing. Not sure,
Yeah, exactly.
But there is good and bad, so it still has to have musical concepts and all that kind of stuff in it. But anyway, so I think that's I think it kind of rounds up my whole thing. I don't know.
No, it's beautiful.
I just ramble. If you had other questions or whatever.
No, we kind of basically went through all almost. I mean, like, I wanted to talk about some of these things. That you've done, so it's so beautiful to hear you talk. It's so inspiring, really. It's to hear you. You have so much energy. You look like you're 41 or something. Like,
thanks.
Really,
it's the I put on a filter and then.
Oh yeah, I knew it. So something.
There's a 41-year-old filter for an old guy.
No, but
I try to stay. Well, music keeps you youthful anyway, and
it does. Yeah.
Just young at heart and everything. So I try to stay healthy and do my thing and have fun. What else is there? This is the only thing we have. This life. So
man, it's once. Yeah.
Why be too serious? Even Alan, he liked to have fun. He was never too serious.
Yeah.
So it's I really enjoyed those days, and everybody I've played with all throughout my past 40 years. It's just
amazing.
It's been a good life, So
it still is. Come on. Well, but I hope you
I've enjoyed the whole thing. So
soon, and
yes, I'd love to come back, and now that things are opening up, I'd love to bring this electric market band over there.
Yeah.
So maybe me and Irvin can come over and we can get a local drummer.
Yeah.
And
let's see.
We can do some other stuff, but
drop me a line if you need some help with some gigs or something. Just let me know, and maybe we can.
I appreciate that. Any help's going to be good help, at this point. So
definitely.
Appreciate that. So hey, man, nice talking to you. Thanks for asking me.
Steve. Thanks so much for sharing some of these stuff. And
my pleasure.
Really appreciate it. So.
And stay in touch.
Yes. Thanks so much.
Dr. Jazz.